Welcome to episode 5 of V8 Warrior Discussions. I'm Baron Avi. I'm a Paragon Warrior out of Fierinai here in Winter's Edge.
I'm Baronet Haraldr Paragon Warrior out of the Everling Woods in Birmingham, Alabama.
I'm Cid. Yeah, I don't have anything fun to go after that. I just
Esquire?
turned level 6. Oh, well, yeah, because they assist. Yeah, Esquire, field bearer. I'm slow. I'm heavy. I do the tank thing.
Our episode today, going through in our series of the abilities in level order, we're covering True Grit. True Grit's our level 3 ability. It is a verbal of the Spirit School with a range of Stealth, and you get it twice per refresh. The incant is the wicked flee when I pursue immediately after you die. And the effect is that it returns you to life with all of your wounds healed, the frozen state for 30 seconds. All of your enchants are removed except for persistent ones the moment you're returned to life. So, our episode last month when we talked about Harden, I said Harden wasn't flashy. But we all had very high opinions of Harden. True Grit is a very flashy ability, coming back to life in the middle of the battlefield right after you've died. Or shortly after you've died. Very, very flash heavy.
Oh man, yeah. You do that right, and you, yeah, it'll scatter some people.
One of my favorite uses I've ever gotten out of True Grit was in a battle game many years ago. We were raiding Ogre's Grotto, and nobody really understood V8 yet. It was still a fairly new thing. I popped that after they had been trying to get me down for about 20 minutes. Just couldn't figure out how to beat the guy in the full plate. They finally bring me down. Oddly enough, with one of the few times somebody's gotten me in the unarmored spot on the back of my leg, I pop that. I'm back up in 30 seconds. And they spend the entire time standing there. What does that? What's he do? What's going on?
Yeah.
And one of my pages, who's on my team, is just standing there laughing from Nirvana. Yeah. To me, this ability is actually very reminiscent of V7 in earlier editions. It's like giving you those 2 extra lives that Warrior got in earlier versions of the game.
Well, it's nice being able to bounce back like that. And, people are like, they'll like, well, okay, because I'm slow, I get iceballed. I get iceballed a lot. And I'm like, I was born of this. Yeah. Yeah, I'll like, I just use it to like occupy an area,
I'm not going to lie, this is actually my least favorite Warrior ability because it doesn't repair your armor. It does.
That's what sucks.
Yeah, and it does remove all of your enchantments that are worn. So if you pop this, the Harden that we were talking about last month goes away. Your ancestral armor that we'll be talking about in a couple of months goes away. Anything that you're packing from a teammate goes away, unless you've gotten it persistent somehow, which we'll actually discuss persistent and stuff in a later episode. But those are 2 very serious downsides to this ability.
Well, I think it's also tricky figuring out when exactly to use it, because it's not just an extra life. You pop it, and then you're there for 30 seconds, frozen. It's too easy for them to get around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to work.
Go ahead.
You've got to worry about your opponent's positioning well during that 30 seconds. If a wizard on the other team is packing Shatter, I don't know if Shatter's on the Druid list off the top of my head. They can shatter you out of frozen and kill you. You can get released out of this early, either by a teammate trying to help you, or an opponent trying to set you up for death. There's a lot of risk involved with it.
No, it's definitely like on death trigger, right?
Yes.
Don't you have 10 seconds to use it after you're dead?
The text is immediately after. So
yeah, okay. There's no spacer there.
Right. I'd give you a couple of seconds just for purposes of. Sorry about that. Let me turn my phone off. I'd give you a few seconds solely for the purpose of coming out of it in convenience sake, just like we give a little bit of time between the words of an incantation or the words of a chant before we consider it broken, but I wouldn't give you 10 seconds. I'd darn sure wouldn't give you 30. I might give you 2.
Yeah. If you're gonna use it, use it.
Very little room for hesitation.
That was actually something I was thinking about on that. It seems like if you're gonna use True Grit, you need to have like a plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is very much one of those abilities that requires the battlefield awareness to know when to use it well. If you've gotten verbal down and you still have most of your armor, and you're not packing any enchants other than your harden, probably a good opportunity to use it overall. But if you're already down a lot of armor, probably a pretty poor choice.
Or like in a shield line.
Yeah, actually taking up that frozen spot in the shield line is not a bad idea.
Yeah, just as a frozen. Yeah. I've actually done that. One of the advantages of being wide is you block the lane.
My girlfriend has a max large round shield, and
Love.
we were doing
I
a
love
castle battle one time. I borrowed that. Had one of my teammates hit me with an ice ball on the back of the board, and every minute or so, or every minute when I popped out, they'd redo it.
Yeah.
Nobody on the other team was packing shatters.
Well, at that point, you're just looking for a really good place to stand.
Yeah.
Castle door was
throttling
2
choke
people.
points with it.
Yep, castle door was about 4 feet wide. I just plunked myself down in the middle of it.
Yep. And it's like some guys, they'll try to avoid you when you're frozen, but you don't really have to, do you? I tell people, listen, man, totally use me as a shield. Throw stuff from behind me. That's what I'm doing. I'm blocking line of sight. I'm obscuring,
You're providing
aiming.
soft cover.
Yeah. Soft cover. What is soft cover?
It's not a game mechanics term. It's just you're providing some sort of cover that can be destroyed, can be impacted, but you're
Yeah.
protecting your teammates.
Yeah. Which is warrior job number 1.
Warrior job number 1 is always keep your teammates alive. Now, often the easiest way to do that is by killing the other team, but that is your job. Oddly enough, I've only got 2 good True Grit stories because it's a spirit school ability. You can't use it if you're cursed. And my favorite enchantment carries curse along with it. So
Would that be like what, Gollum?
Yeah, Golem is my favorite. It curses you along with several other enchantments do as well, but if you are carrying something that curses you, you cannot pop your True Grit unless you've got some weird interaction. And there are interactions out there. Probably go over them.
Can we bring up Shake It Off in this one? Or do we want to wait till that one to do that? Because that's a little bit of an interaction there that's interesting.
We'll mention it. I think we'll go into it in more detail when we get to the Shake It Off episode.
Okay.
But you want to go ahead and mention what you're talking about, Sid?
Oh, well, yeah. Shake It Off will reduce the effect time of a state that you're under to 10 seconds. So even if you're frozen by True Grit and you use Shake It Off, which you could use frozen, then instead of standing for 30 seconds, you're standing for 10. So it reduces that bounce back time.
Yeah, I mean, popping back in 10 seconds is a lot better than popping back in 30. And it reduces the amount of time that you're vulnerable to being shattered.
Yeah.
Opposing casters really make this a tough ability to use effectively.
And that's like that's like another great situation where warriors definitely want to know the magic,
Absolutely. I see warrior get used a lot of times as a newbie class, and there's so much that you have to know about how the other classes work, how the abilities interact.
Yeah.
And it requires stick, so warrior is probably a good second class to play. I wouldn't consider it a good first.
Yeah. I started warrior. I started as warrior, and I I didn't have like my kit was like non-existent, so I didn't have look the part either. So like for 5 weeks, it was like I have no abilities. I can't kill people. I can't scab. Yeah. You definitely want to have something to bring to it when you go into warrior.
Yeah, I started off warrior with loner, shield, and sword, and mostly leveled it without armor. It was not great, and I definitely have benefited from learning about magic in the meantime. Still haven't leveled a caster class, but I know enough to play warrior well.
Prior to this recording, I had leveled up every class I could play. Since our previous recording, they've added 2 more classes that I can play, so I've got to level those up now.
Yeah, that's gonna change things a little bit.
My first class when I started was actually Assassin. I played it for 19 weeks, which was about halfway to level 3, or halfway from level 2 to level 3 back then. Absolutely hated the class. It didn't work for me. I discovered the beauty of Sword and Board.
Ah, yes.
Built my own board, started playing healer, played that for a while, then went to an event where they hard capped the number of healers that you could play, borrowed some Brigandine, played Warrior
Nice.
for the first time. It didn't fit. I had this like 6-inch wide strip down the center of my chest that was
Ooh.
just begging people to stab me in it.
Yep.
Because I'm 6'4". I'm a big guy. Borrowed armor doesn't work very well for me.
No, armor is so intimate. Yeah, you got to have it like just about made for you, or be able to like refit it somehow. It's you got to be able to close those gaps.
Yeah, that big 6. I died to that 2 of my 5 deaths that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to stay alive with only 6 lives for the entirety of Noblander was an adventure.
Wow.
Here's so much stuff about Noblander.
Yeah, Noblander and Crystalline Chronicles are the two best like weekend her story adventure missions her events I've attended.
Well, in a situation like that, like, okay, so True Grit is refresh, right? It's like
Right.
what, twice the refresh? So like how would they call the refreshes on something like that?
Normally, go ahead.
Noblander died before V8 really became a thing.
Ah,
Crystalline Chronicles, they did refreshes, I want to say about every 5 hours or so.
It was usually like you get one in the morning and then one at lunch, is what I remember.
Yeah.
well, like knowing where those refreshes come, man, that's like long game strategy, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Especially
Yeah.
when also Ancestral Armor used to be only, for the longest time, it used to only be 2 refresh.
It's 3 refresh now.
Yeah, it is 3 now, so it's a little less resource intensive to use it, but it was for the longest time.
Yeah, True Grit becomes a lot more valuable if you're in a game that's got slower spawn times. Like, God, V7, the base respawn time was 5 minutes.
Wow.
The Kingdom event Haraldr and I attended 2 weeks before we recorded this, I think. Everything was on a 30-second spawn timer. So, True Grit in that sort of scenario is less useful. But if you've got a long hike back to your spawn, like at Crystalline Chronicles, where you may end up a quarter of a mile away from the spawn point.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I would end up popping True Grit rather than walking another half a mile. There's no way I'd be able to handle that. Oh my god.
Yeah, it can be rough. You definitely need some good shoes for those types of events.
Oh man.
Crystalline Chronicles was what I thought I was getting into when I got into Amped Guard. I didn't really understand, based on what I'd seen on the website and what my buddy had told me, what I was getting into. Crystalline Chronicles was what I thought it was. And I missed that set of events.
Yeah, I do kind of miss it.
I never got to go to that. I've heard it was like some kind of an open world thing.
Yes. So you'd show up Friday, and they'd give a pregame brief, like in the evening, usually already after dark. And they'd be like, all right, this is the open world, here's the boundaries. They might have a printout that you can read as well as the brief. And then like we're gonna do a dungeon at X time and it's gonna open. And like there would be multiple teams and they would need to collaborate to get through the dungeon for the reward, which then they would have to fight over. And there would be other elements going on. And then Saturday it would just be like that whole open world, like the whole time, but with like events that would happen and maybe 1 or 2 like pitched battles, which would be like a normal battle game. It was always like, do we get like all of our like a fresh list when we go into the battle game? You know, because like again, like it was playing having a continuous game for that long can be so resource intensive on your per refresh abilities.
Yeah.
That's where things like persistent golem, those become absolutely vital. They keep your teammates going and going and going. Downside to those
Well,
events as a warrior is you're dead tired by the end of them.
Yeah, the fatigue. You gotta
yeah,
train for that stuff.
that's why I don't run. I no, if I gotta pick up my feet a little bit, it's no, we're fixing to screw up, buddy. Yeah, we
I
we do the slow thing.
I ascribe to the Tolkien dwarven mentality of I'm very slow, but I'm an also natural sprinter. Very dangerous over short distances.
Yeah, those sprints can be a lot of fun, really intimidating for the other team too.
Oh yeah, because most of the time you're like trudge, 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 and then all of a sudden, pop, 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 pop,
Yeah.
pop. Yeah. Holy snot! Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, my armor clanks loudly.
Oh, so is mine.
No, I rock like a quilt and a little bit of chain once in a while. I'm quiet. One of these days, though.
I'm about as stealthy as a semi-truck.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it's like you want to lean into that, though. You want to be like, I'm gonna walk at you menacingly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it totally plays into how I play. I don't want to speak for Avi. But I've actually been told on other occasions that like my team hearing me approach was a like morale boost. They're like, "Oh, the
Oh
reinforcements
yeah.
are coming."
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I've been told that can be heard almost a quarter mile off when I'm at a full run.
Wow.
I'm
Oh,
I'm pretty sure that was exaggerated, but that's what I got told.
I remember being told that too, and I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "I don't know, man." But if that's the story you want to tell, it's pretty fantastic. So whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those. I'll take it.
Yeah.
hey, you want to you want to let that echo a bit so that when it comes back, it's a little louder. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, I had a interesting question come to mind when we started talking about events. Have you guys noticed that True Grit works a little differently at like major kingdom events than it does like park days? Like, what is the difference there?
Yeah,
Can
I feel.
you
Is
give an example? Because I don't understand what you mean. I mean, if you don't, it's fine. But
like we have like a series of games here at park right out there on the field, right? And
yeah,
then like, what is that like at like I don't know the say the event that's coming up in October, right? What is that, Coronation?
Yep.
it's coordination.
Yeah, I mean, how does that work there? That's literally going to be like my first event, and uh, how do the refreshes work there? And
So we don't know right now really what the game schedule is going to be. If there's going to be an open world thing, it could just be a series of battle games where refresh at the beginning of each game.
okay,
But if there's any special circumstances, the person running the game is going to tell you.
okay,
Um,
Now, in terms of True Grit working differently, you play in a fairly sizable duchy. True Grit will be a fairly similar for you in terms of how it functions. You're going to see there's a lot more variety of classes at the kingdom level because more people out playing, there's more opportunity to see everything.
yeah, really looking forward to that.
So you're more likely to run into that shatter or have a teammate release you early or have an enemy release you while your buddies or while his buddies are surrounding you, ready to stab,
Oh,
stab, 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 stab the moment you pop out.
oh, 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 God, yeah, that happened.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's happened to me a few times.
yeah, actually, this was I might have a fun story for this one. One day, it actually did. It took like 5 guys to kill me. I had a bard in front of me using release on me, and I had my chain on with and my chain is a 14 gauge, so it's 4 instead of 3. So I had Bard in front of me, 2 guys next to him on either side of him, and then like another 2 guys behind me. And I mean, they wanted it. They wanted it bad. But I barely managed to move before like the last hit got in. And yeah, I mean they definitely finished me because there was like 5 of them, but they did. If you've got the armor, you're gonna get squad attention while you're frozen.
The upside to that is if they're paying attention to, if they've got 5 people paying attention to you, that's 5
Yeah.
people that aren't being on your team that aren't being paid attention to.
Yeah, and I've seen like really simple battle games, like where like somebody would be well, I do goalie. I do goalie a lot. Like say ring the bell or like capture the flag. They got to get to my flag, they got to get to my bell, and if they got to get around me, then I could usually give our team an advantage. But a lot of the times, all of a sudden, like a 5v5 becomes a 5v4. And when that happens on the field, you definitely start to see even one person missing. It changes the way that rolls. So, yeah, if you can get somebody with release and somebody else getting ready to end you, yeah, you're effectively blocking out like 2 of their people at least.
We used to have a guy who played Bard in my park who, I don't know why he would do this, but if we'd be in a 3-on-3 situation, he would use awe on somebody on the other team and then go hauling ass off of after somebody else and just leave his team, so that instead of having a 3v2 in his team's favor waiting for that person to pop out of awe, you'd end up with a 2-on-2 and a 1-on-1. Basically, he'd waste the ability and gain no real benefit.
This is coming from me, from a weird place. I almost get that immediately because I do this. It's stupid. It's a weakness. Okay, sure, but like, I will not. My conscience just screws with me. I will not, like, if somebody is fighting somebody, I won't like join up with them to fight that guy. I'll watch their back, but I will definitely let them have that fight, because for me that's like that's a Bushido thing, you know. So maybe he was just like, I don't know, picking a guy that would like, that they couldn't handle or had an advantage or something, getting rid of him, and then I don't know. Yeah.
No,
Well, what Avi's saying is that by him awing someone and then removing himself from that fight, it basically nullifies
Yeah.
the awe.
Yeah,
Because
that is
now that
goofy.
person can re-engage.
Yeah, that's once he's out of range of that, that is goofy.
It's just being a silly goose.
Well, when I started, when I first got True Grit, right? Something I did to learn how to use the ability and to get kind of a feel for it was literally just like, just start popping it out. You know what I mean? And it was like you had to learn those worst possible situations. You know, like, yeah, I've been shattered when I was frozen. I've been released and stabbed. I've been in situations where I've popped True Grit, and then 30 seconds later, I am worse off than I was before,
Yeah.
a lot of our battle games are very fast flowing, so if you pop True Grit, you may be out longer than you would have been if you had just gone back and respawned.
Exactly. Yeah. Or let somebody like summon corpse you and bring you back. You just have to like pop it out until you get kind of like a clue for it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, True Grit I really feel is reminiscent of V7's number of lives per game design. I know that it's not intended to be that; it's intended to give you a little bit more staying power, but it's just too situational for me.
Oh yeah,
Incredibly situational to be effective.
Oh yeah, it's definitely tactical. because it's like you can't recast Harden because that was per life. You're still on that life. You know, you could scavenge. You know, but
Yeah, your AA is gone.
yeah, yep, and that's per refresh too. You know, I mean, I could see like if the point was to like capture. You know, yeah, okay, all right. You've managed to get into a base. You're standing in a position where you can get to the goal.
I think the only time I've used it post the start of the pandemic was we were doing a game of King of the Hill.
Ah,
I got verbaled to death while on the hill. And of course, just being an asshole, I popped True Grit. So I'm still in there for the next 30 seconds.
hey, still works. Legitimate strategy.
Oh yeah.
Hey, that'll be like the one verbal they wish they would have packed.
Luckily, I was the only caster on the opposing team was a druid, so no shatters. I went ahead and looked it up while we've been chatting. Shatter is wizard only right now. Obviously, with V9 or magic items, anything can change, but you know.
Yeah.
But I just, okay, I'm going to stand here and I'm frozen. What are you going to do about it?
Yep. So you're frozen, right?
Right.
Okay. So does that mean you are ice, or you're just really cold, or are we talking about like a Neanderthal in an ice cube situation here? Or like what?
Well, and you're
How?
bringing
How do
back
you,
memories of a TV show called Crow from when I was a little kid.
yeah. How do you picture that when you're frozen?
I've always kind of gone with the like covered in ice.
Yeah, I've kind of pictured it like Ice Block from World of Warcraft.
Um,
I suppose while we're talking about this, we ought to cover what the frozen state does in terms of game mechanics.
oh, yeah. Super important.
Like all other states, Frozen's found at the start of the magic section of the rulebook. Once again, we're telling you guys to, as part of Warriors, learn the magic section.
Oh, Warrior is the most magical class in Amtgard, hands down.
What's more magical than barbarian?
Well,
I'm pretty sure my dog is more magical than Barbarian.
well,
Well, that's because
I don't
barbarian doesn't have any magical abilities.
I don't know any other class that literally weaves the souls of their enemies into the material that composes their armor. I mean, it's ethereal to material. Nobody else can do that. You got magical armor, sure, but that's still just spirit to spirit. You know, and that's just level 1.
All right, so
Warrior.
Frozen. Frozen. Player may not move, speak, or take any action. Can only be affected by mechanics that work on states in general, such as release. This also includes greater release, or frozen in specific, such as shatter. Otherwise, player and their equipment are not affected by combat, magic, or anything else. So you're stuck there, pretty much stock still, but you can't be interacted with. The other team can't mess with it or can't do anything to you besides let you out early or kill you with shatter. And I don't believe there's actually any other mechanic in the game that interacts directly with Frozen.
Yeah, it's I've always thought about it. I've always thought of Frozen
Stoneform?
as being more.
What was that, Heralder?
Stoneform? Doesn't it like technically make
Doesn't
you frozen?
It makes you frozen, but like there's nothing else that besides shatter that requires the target be frozen.
Oh, okay.
Wait, does stone form give you the frozen state?
Yes.
Ah, well, yeah, there you go.
So does Ward's. No, it's not Ward Self. There's a first or second level wizard ability that does the same thing.
Force barrier.
Yes. Thank you.
Frozen for 30 seconds.
And that's pretty much Mage's Ice Block from World of Warcraft. Now, we were talking before we started recording, Sid, and you were talking about the incantation.
Oh, yeah. God, yes. There's like 4 different ways to say, hang on, the wicked flee when I pursue. And there's only one right way to do it. And if you learn it the wrong way, it will be stuck in your brain forever. Dear God, make sure you get that incant down. The wicked flee when I pursue. I have to say it like I have to like read over my card before I get into stuff because I learned it wrong, and it's just no. Park level, you'll probably get by with, you know, juxtapositioning a couple of words there, but I would imagine at kingdom level, they're going to be looking for that subordinate clause at the end of the declaration. There's no comma in it. It's just the wicked flee when I pursue. And boy, is that really easy to get backwards and sideways.
Wicked flee when I claw to barata necktie.
Yeah.
I've seen Army of Darkness one time too many.
You definitely watch that one on repeat yearly.
Sometimes, some monsters get true grit, and I think skeletons get true grit, which I've done a time or two, and I've had fun shaking it up a little bit. Same number of syllables, actually one more syllable. Or no, yeah, same syllables. When if I'm playing an evil creature, I'll say the righteous flee when I pursue to add some extra flavor.
Yeah, monsters always get a little bit of a pass on things being exactly right, especially if you're at an RP heavy event like Crystalline Chronicles or Book of Heroes or something like that.
Well, I mean, as long as you're doing it and it's cool, then it's cool, you know. But it's like there are the sticklers out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially since it's a self-targeting ability, it's a little easier for it to be cool.
Yeah.
Since I would hard object to somebody trying to do that with a verbal, or an offensive verbal, just because confusion can result.
Yeah.
And thank you, Cid. Your question earlier made me think of a TV show that I haven't watched since I think I was 8 years old.
Well, it's kind of a fun idea, you know. I mean, how exactly are you frozen? You know, there was a RP I was involved in like a little bit ago, right? And the idea was that Cid had unblocked this river by using his really big sword and hitting the crap out of this obstruction that was keeping the river from flowing. Well, normally getting hit in the face with a river would have killed anybody, you know. So the wicked flee when I pursue. Bam! Now you're frozen. The water around you is frozen. Now instead of being like blown away by the river, you're anchored in place and safe, you know. But you know, it's and that's a lot of what happens on the field too. Is like things tend to move around you when you're stuck like that, you know.
Yeah.
So like it's like kind of like the way you pictured how the state works. I mean, it does. It kind of changes the way you use it.
When you're in an RP situation like that, you've got a lot more leeway, and how you imagine it is a lot more important.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like something else to say.
Actually, an anecdote I have about True Grit was, I think it was Book of Heroes. It was Book of Heroes, and I used True Grit when I had a party kill or party wipe in one of the mini dungeons, and I thought I was being heroic, which I guess you could say I was, but I was also surrounded by like 5 or 6 monsters when I came out that immediately killed me again. So it's like you get to really pick when you use it. Like throwing it out there to be like heroic isn't always going to be the most effective. Maybe good stories, which you can say is worthy of it still. And like Avi said earlier, because battlefields are so dynamic, they can change by the time you get out. But knowing that if you're at like a pitched point that's going to be in contention for the whole time is going to be like one of the best places to use it.
Oh yeah, if you know you got guys coming back.
Yeah.
If the idea is to hold a position, yeah, I've done that.
That same sort of thing, like me holding onto the hill for an extra 30 seconds when I probably wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Yep. Doors. I have used it not to be in the doorway, but like once you get past the doorway, if you're on like either side of it, that's a place where you'll have like enemies will like stay like right by the doorway, and they'll either like attack around the wall, or they'll just wait for like guys to come along. Well, like, if you fall for that, you true grit right there beside the door. It gives that cover, you know? But yeah, if you're just covering, it's gonna burn out in 30 seconds, and stuff needs to be achieved, you know?
Right. Of course, for some of us, doors aren't an issue. Haraldr.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with the door.
Have a plan. Or just, be a door smasher. Yeah.
My plan is if I need to get through a door, I'm getting soft kitty. My catapults will open them for me.
Nice.
But no, in all seriousness, being able to put yourself frozen in a choke point can be incredibly useful. Bridge battles, not quite as useful in a river battle, but
Yeah.
FR has been doing a lot of mountain battles recently,
Mountain?
where you have to climb between tiers of the mountain, and it's got some interesting mechanics to it.
Like terraces?
Yep.
Huh. Can't say I've done too much of that.
I saw it used at Ever Living Woods a couple of years ago, and we've kind of co-opted it.
I mean, it definitely seems like it adds that extra layer of get to itness. You know what I'm saying? When you can break your defense down in levels, it changes the way the game flows. That's interesting. I'm definitely gonna have to try that sometime.
We often do it with like concentric circles, but if you set it at the edge of the field, it's easier to do with terraces, and just have that and have a sort of cliff at the backside. But now we're getting into game design instead of true grit.
Well, it's like that's just how like intensive you have to think about true grit. You have to kind of think about how the game is designed and where would be the best place to use it. Not just like when.
Absolutely.
You want to. It's tricky to use.
Now, one of the things I drill into my newbies is the concept of battlefield awareness. Stay alert, stay alive.
Yeah, no kidding. The shield only works in direction, kids.
This particular ability is probably the one that requires the most battlefield awareness of any of Warrior's abilities.
Oh, yeah.
I'd put Insult up there with it as well, but that's kind of...
Well, you can charge that one.
No, you can't.
You can't? Oh, that's like per life straight up?
Yep, it's per life. Once if you don't have look the part, twice if you do.
Okay.
Now, back in V8 playtesting, I suggested making it chargeable, and Sir Brennan was like, well, we're already talking about Warrior being the most powerful melee class. What would you give up to make Warrior more powerful by making Insult chargeable? At the time, I didn't have an answer for him. 8 years later, honestly, True Grit would be what I'd give up.
Yeah, I could see that. That would change, like, the whole skew of it.
Now, True Grit becomes a lot more powerful, I feel like, if there are not casters on the enemy team.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But let's face it, casters are the most powerful classes. And after about a 2-week learning period, they're probably the most newbie-friendly classes in the game.
Definitely.
I know that seems counterintuitive because you've got to do that little bit of learning to be effective with them, but it doesn't take long to learn the shove spell or heat weapon.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit longer to learn heal.
You also want to watch out for projectile users, because you have to announce when the freeze is released, and it's been more than a couple of times when I'll come right out of frozen and I'll announce the release and flip, here comes something at me from behind, just pegged with a ball,
Yeah, getting hit with it or getting chain CC'd back in. I'm not generally too worried about the damage dealing stuff because I'm packing enough armor that I'm not worried. But nothing sucks harder than getting just chain CC'd and not getting to play.
Yeah, that sucks.
Though I have admittedly done that to somebody.
Could you, Avi?
I did. We had a guy in our park who was not a good person. And both in-game and out-of-game, he was a bit of a horse's ass, to put it nicely. And he had this in-game problem with undead. And after my last shoulder injury, I started laying into playing a necromancer pretty heavily, just as a way to keep playing while I was recovering enough to be able to play Warrior again. So I decide to spend one battle game chain iceballing him, and then every time he was frozen, standing there telling him about the glories of the undead.
Oh,
Took a guy, he'd been playing for about a year, so losing him was, in trade for me, was a pretty good deal for his team. So his teammates were actually really happy with it. He wasn't.
I'm. Well, yeah, but no, you were like necromancer, right? So you're healer. So you're
Yeah.
effectively standing behind a guy that's frozen. And yeah, I mean, hey, yeah, why not? You've got plenty of cover. You can still do the heal thing you need to do.
Both teams just kind of by mutual agreement decided, you know what, we're going to let the two of them do their thing.
It's a legitimate strategy.
Yeah, my teammates thought it was funny. His teammates realized they were taking me out of the game, and losing that guy in exchange for taking me out of the game was a good deal for them.
I actually do. I have a lot of problem with healers on the field because when you are thicker, right, you don't tend to twirl out of the way so well. So, yeah, I'll pick a spot. I'm like, okay, I need to be frozen here, and I'll get that guy's attention, and I know what his game is. Throw an ice ball at Cid. I think once you get that kind of thing going, you can almost occupy this one spot just almost indefinitely, And it got to the point where the bridge, the width of it was cut in half, So you had this bottleneck that became a choke point, and his team was like, dude, quit doing it.
Yeah, being frozen can help you control the battlefield. As always, it's one of those situational things where you have to plan.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I think from my perspective with learning the warrior abilities, you get kind of shy about it because you're not sure when to use it. You'd be like, okay, well, I need to save this for later, and you'll end up with like that classic like meme that you've got like 9,000 high potions, and they're not doing you any good in your inventory, So, when you're learning this stuff, definitely just pop it out,
Yeah, I have to agree. It's better to use it at the wrong time when you're learning than it is to save it and never use it. If your abilities are just never used, why play it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you've got 2 of them per refresh if you haven't used them the entire game because you were waiting for that perfect moment.
To anyone who's seen Pirates of the Caribbean, we all know that Will Turner missed the opportune moment. Don't be Will Turner. Take a risk.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you use True Grit, you're frozen for 30 seconds, you come back to life, and then you get killed immediately. Worst thing that happens is now you got your armor back, your hardened back, you go back to spawn. It was going to be the same thing that was going to happen anyway. Until you get a feel for it, just waste it. That, I have made a mistake a lot, and I'm going to quit doing that. But because of that, I found out real quick when to do it, when not to do it.
And this is one of those abilities that if you're lucky, you'll actually use it less and less as you level up. I very frequently have access to a friendly AON druid who saves me a point or 2 on his list to give me Golem. So trading this for making my Ancestral persistent with Golem, it's a good trade. But it's a trade that I had to consider making.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a character build. There's always give and takes with that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely on that. I mean, there's a set of enchants that I'm looking at wanting to rock as an anti-paladin now that everybody can play it. And everything's a bit of a tweak here and there.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the V8 playtesting, there was a point in time where Bard had a very minor nerf to it, and Warrior got a fairly solid nerf to True Grit at the same time. Just the same playtest update, both got hurt. And my buddy who was playing Bard just kind of shut down and quit playing Bard because the one enchant that he wanted to use got nerfed to the point where he didn't want to use it anymore. Me, I sat down and was like, okay, how does this change what the best options for me are?
Yeah.
And I went from thinking Void Touched was the best enchant for a warrior, although I could have made arguments for other choices there as well, to Persistent being the number one choice, or Golem being the number one choice.
Well, yeah, it's like you set out to play warrior, and it wasn't until later that I even started thinking about it as character builds. What are you going to carry in your left hand? How is that going to change the way you're doing things? Are you rolling the giant shield or are you using the pole? Where are you on the field? And warrior, man, you come up with a build, you run it.
Warrior is probably the most versatile class in terms of its equipment selections.
Oh,
any shields, all the armor you could ever want,
Yep.
Every melee weapon. You're limited on your ranged options, but you've still got them.
Yeah, you've even got an insult.
Yeah, you've got an offensive verbal. You
can stop an enemy from capturing a flag with that. If somebody's on a capture count, you can totally throw that out there.
Oh, I've got some great insult stories, and I'm looking forward to telling my favorite one next episode. I've been looking forward to telling this story on air for 3 or 4 episodes now.
Well, that's an interesting point. When you guys were talking about the very first episode was about the characters that they gave for example for warrior, right? And I think you guys were talking about a lot of them were just commanders. They weren't necessarily, warriors on the battlefield. They were strategists. They were, leading from the tent, And I think when you really start to think about how you're going to put your warrior together and how you're going to run it, you start to see why those are the examples. You want to have that cerebral warrior mentality.
I'm going to have to kind of... Sorry, go ahead, Haraldr.
Well, I don't know. I want to say the word sergeant from a medieval battlefield, warfield, whatever, would be the term, but I don't know. In that a small group commander of their company or whatever would be a better example, but none of them are famous. Come on.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when I'm able to get into the zone of playing a warrior, I am looking around, I'm making calls outs, I'm trying to get in the right spot, hey, I need help over here, you go over there, stuff like that. I'm not really expecting people to listen to me, but I'm just trying. And sitting in these examples in an amp guard field would be sitting at, well, it could be helpful, but sitting at the back and trying to yell at your team about what to do from the back is not as helpful as helping those frontline skirmishes out.
Yeah, there are far better classes for doing that particular role. Archer and Healer actually spring to mind as the two best for that, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
But I absolutely agree that you have to have... You can't just go out raw or swing stick and be an effective warrior. You have to plan. You have to think about your abilities. You have to know how they work together. You have to be able to read the local level of the battlefield. The 2 or 3 guys to either side of you.
Which means that True Grit is either a really horrible ability or it just requires an upper level mode of thinking.
Yeah, you're pretty much spot on with that. Well, like I said earlier, True Grit is probably my least favorite warrior ability. To me, it really does feel like a holdover from V7. But as we've kind of discussed, there are still uses for it. There's still times it comes up as a good ability.
Oh, yeah.
I think that brings me to kind of where I wanted to end things. Do you guys have anything?
No,
I'm done.
Had much to say the whole time, honestly.
I'm trying to drill you guys. Because if anybody knows how to do this, it's you. Come on.
All right, well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up on that note. This
Alrighty.
video will be posted later on, probably about a month after the one before it, and probably a month before the one after it. In our next episode, episode 6, we will be discussing Insult, which one of the most fun abilities in my opinion, and I'm looking forward to telling a great story there. I hope to catch y'all on the next one. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Always a pleasure. Laters.